Welcome back to another episode of Peeping Ballers. I'm your host Albert, joined again by Michael and Paul. Today we're going to recap Korea's thrilling 3-2 win over Iraq. Guys, I think we all knew that this was kind of the game in this international window that would be more of a litmus test for Myung-bo and his squad. Initial reactions, I thought the offense was pretty free-flowing and did a lot better than I expected. There were a few lineup decisions that I think were still questionable, and I wonder how that's going to go in the future. But I guess it's hard to complain for 6 points out of six.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to complain, but I feel like we could, and I feel like we should. I don't think we should be feeling nervous in stoppage time of the second half about how we're maybe going to drop points to these guys. That's certainly not ideal. I'll gripe about this all day. I griped about it on Twitter Spaces this morning. I don't know what Hyeon-gyu's got to do to get a jersey number at this point. Like, at least he should have been given the opportunity to, dress, maybe be one of the substitutes. PJ, like you liked Park Hyung-woo, right? Like he was okay, but you have to admit, like he's just okay, right? That's about his level, right?
I would say so. Also, it's not like either Iraq or Jordan really challenged us defensively. I feel like I know Iraq scored a couple on us there at the end, but mostly off a set piece or crosses. But I'd like to see us be more tested in the midfield. We kind of dominated, I think, both games in the midfield, surprisingly for once. So it's hard to judge Park Young based off these two games, but I mean he didn't stand out in a bad way. So kudos to him for that.
Yeah, I think we were all worried about Park Kyung-woo starting. He didn't really make any huge blunders. Had a few good plays, but again, it's not like we were facing a high octane offense. Like I said in the previous video, the Jordan team that we faced last game is a far cry from the one we faced at the semifinals of the Asian Cup. This Iraq team under Jesus Casas right now, I don't think they've been playing that offensively in their recent qualifiers as well. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. But there were a lot of positives. Like I like the fact that Jun-ho was starting at left wing. Would have liked to see Hyeon-gyu start, but Mike's boy Oh-se-hoon was starting up top. It was interesting, I think, to notice though that Myung-bo did make his substitutions rather quickly. I believe the first subs were on in sometime in the 52nd, 53rd minute. He took off Oh-se-hoon and Pejino for Oh Hyung-gyu. And then, spoiler, he puts on Moon Sun-min, who I think a lot of us have very strong opinions about. I mean, Moon did okay for what he is. He's not the most popular player. He's not the most talented. I think he's just a workman-like winger that is able to get in behind and find some space, but isn't the best at finishing, neither is he very physically very astute at taking on defenders. I guess I'll go to PJ with this one first. PJ, what was your reaction when you saw those two quick subs in the beginning of the second half?
Well, I figured Oh Young-gyu would get in pretty quickly based off his performance against Jordan, and he kind of rewarded Myung-bo for that early substitution with his energy. I think that's what his biggest, at least, asset right now is. He just brings a different type of energy, almost like a desperateness to his play. And I'm sure it's like he wants to stick onto the KNT and doesn't want to move and get left out again. But he definitely brings a different type of energy, different type of aggressiveness and speed that we're not seeing at the 9 position. So that was a breath of fresh air. On the other hand, Moon Sun-min came in. He didn't score, thankfully, so we didn't have to see the dance. But he brought a different type of profile, I think, than Pejuno, who's more of a cutting inverted type of guy from the left side, and Moon Sun-min more is like a sideline hugging type of winger, and maybe they were going for a different look. I don't know what they were trying to do, but it worked. It worked. He was effective. I know he wasn't in the game for that long, but he had some positive plays, and that's a lot more than I thought he would do anyway. So big ups to Moon Sun-min too, I guess.
When the commentator initially said that Moon Sun-moon was coming on, I was horrified. I was like, why is he the first guy off the bench? That's kind of weird. But then obviously, he came on with Oh Hyun-gyu, and I was like, this kind of mitigates it. Like, this is gonna be fine. And to be honest, them coming on together made sense because they were there to bring a lot of energy and try to get behind a tired defense, and that's what they did. But also, what kind of surprised me was how good Moon Sun-min's first touch was all night. He took down a lot of cross-field passes pretty well, and then we kind of forget that to free up Lee Myung-jae for that cross. He's the guy that did that like kind of like flick touch past the defense. So he honestly like had a good game, and his touch was there. So we can't really fault him for, you know, being what he is. Like he had his best game in a national team kit, like I think forever. This might be his best game ever. So good for him. We'll give him plaudits for that. I kind of want to go back to this because PJ did say this. Yeah, Ocean is my guy. I'm very happy for him. I don't think that he's anywhere close to being, you know, the best number 9 that we have. He's a far cry from that. I even think that it's possible that Chokyu-san could be better than him when he's on form. But I did think that he did a good job. Like he dropped deep. He did some hold up play. He also like released some pretty good passes. And then obviously like when he was asked to, you know, go along with that run that Seoryung was on, and then when it missed him, he got back on side quick and he made sure he was in position to score that goal. So overall, he had a good game, and it was kind of like the right strategy. Play him for the first half, let him, you know, be physical with the Iraqi defense, and then get on Oh Hyun-gyu and let him just kind of, you know, terrorize them with his pace and his finishing. It worked out. I think that honestly, like the strategy and the tactics of that worked out. So we got to give Myung-bo like plaudits for that, actually.
Yeah, I think that we were all horrified when we saw him come on, but then we kind of saw the vision, right? Like Mike and PJ said, it was to kind of get him behind, work some 1-2 combinations with Oh Hyun-gyu. And Moon Sun-min, like, yeah, he did contribute on Oh's goal. He had the little nice run down the touchline. But I think long term, some of these personnel decisions in these two games have still been very questionable, in my opinion. Namely, starting Park Kyung-woo for both games and not giving Kwon Hyuk-gyu a chance. Also, guys, I think maybe I'm going back a bit to the defense. I don't know if Choi Hyun-woo played that well today. I think the first goal by Iraq was a nice bicycle kick. Okay, it was great form from Hussein, who's a fantastic player, but he probably should be saving that. I wondered if Kim Sung-gi would have gotten a chance because he actually has been tearing it up in the Saudi league. I remember at one point he had a string of games where he just kept a bunch of clean sheets and it looked like he had never torn his ACL. I know Hong is a loyal guy to a fault at times. I understand starting Choi Hyun-woo for the first match, but going forward, and I guess what's your biggest concern with Hong Myung-bo going forward, considering what we saw in these two matches? For me,
I mean, you already talked about central defensive midfield. Another concern is this whole goalkeeping situation. Because let's be real, like you made a really good point, Albert. Jo Hyun-woo was not good today. PJ was talking about this in the group chat. Why the hell did Jo Hyun-woo not try to come out and grab that cross that Hussein does the bicycle kick on? Why does he not think he doesn't like he has enough speed to get that and punch that away? He doesn't think that he's got the time for that.
Yeah,
So that's kind of
it was
that's
super
suspect.
super predictable of a cross, and it came in really like almost like a lob. It was like up there for like 5 seconds, and I
Yeah,
was like, "You just gonna sit there?" And then it was kind of
I
a
don't know.
weird.
Yeah, like
It was kind of a weird thing because Hussein was like basically right in front of goal, and it was like
yeah.
he's maybe a meter away, and I'm like, why is Choyun so far back? And it just caught me off guard when that happened. I do
It's
agree.
as if like Jo Hyun-woo's like almost like admitting he's like, I'm a saves guy. I'm not
Yeah,
a come off my line guy. I'm not like the best with claiming crosses with my hands. It's just it reeks of like a goalkeeper that's kind of like stuck in like what he does. And I don't know, like for me, a big concern is when are we gonna stop just relying on these two guys, Kim Sung-gyu, Jo Hyun-woo? When are we gonna stop? Because at some point we're gonna have to quit them. They're gonna get too old. They're gonna have to retire, right? If we haven't tried out anybody else that's younger, what the hell are we doing? These two guys, Jo Hyun-woo, Kim Sung-gyu, they have one more World Cup in them. So if you're not giving any meaningful minutes to someone else, it's a concern for me. And I think like the biggest concern, like you said it about Hong Myung-bo, the biggest concern about him is that he has his guys and he won't really like deviate from that. Park Kyung-woo was Hong Myung-bo's central defensive midfielder for like years until he moved to the Middle East, right? So that's kind of like a loyalty that's being rewarded, but it's not like the ceiling on that guy is ever getting any higher than where it is. We've got the finished product with this guy, and that is what it's going to be. But if you looked at other options, you could maybe discover a better potential talent than what's on display in central defensive midfield right now. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, you guys already harped on the defensive midfielder position. I'm still a little concerned with the opposite side of Soryeong, and whether or not for Soyoung, the left side is better or the right side is better. I still prefer him on the left side personally because he's not really a blazer. He's not gonna run down the right flank and blow by people. I think he's better as a playmaker, inverting in on the left side. Lee Myung-jae, I mean, he was decent today. I think defensively he looked a little lost. I mean, he did have that cross for an assist, which was a great one to Lee Jae-sung for the diving header. But I don't know. I'm a little concerned with that. I think with how Choi Min gave me a little bit of confidence teaming up with Kim Min-jae today, and then against Jordan as well. So maybe we can kind of explore that option a little bit more going forward. But I'm still, I think, like we've stated, the biggest question marks would be, a central defensive midfielder, and then the opposite fullback of whoever is playing with Soryeong, because I think Soryeong is pretty much a bona fide starter at this point. He's just too important to what we do.
Yeah, I think another concern is just like, what are we gonna do with our central attacking midfielder position? Because at some point we're gonna have to realize that Lee Jae-sung doesn't really work as a central attacking midfielder. Are we gonna give that job to Kang-in at any time soon? Like we maybe should, or are we gonna like kind of? Is the tactics gonna just be that he's better on the right wing, cutting in and doing what he does best with that? Because don't get me wrong, he's very good at that position. But if we're gonna continue to start Lee Jae-sung, that's gonna come and bite us in the ass at some point. On counterattacks or like leading attacks, sometimes he's too slow. His passing kind of lets him down. When can we just transition him to the impact sub role where he comes off the bench and he gets to score a goal like the third goal in this match from the bench, right? Are we sure that maybe Hong Hyun-suk couldn't be the central attacking midfielder with Hwang In-bum behind him, right, helping him create, right? Is that a possibility that we want to explore? Could Bae Jun-ho be that guy? Or should Hwang In-bum even be moved into that role and then another central defensive midfielder be put behind him for Lee Jae-sung? There's a lot of things that we could explore with that tactically, and I just wish, I'm concerned that we're going to get too married to the idea that Lee Jae-sung is going to be still good in 2 years' time, and I'm not sure that that's true.
Just rubbing my hands like Birdman. Listen to this. PJ, Lee Kang-in, and Lee Jae-sung. Just go, man. What'd you see?
I think we're in a bit of a funk on the right side, to be honest with you. And I think the biggest problem is that teams are now prepared for Yang playing on the right and basically saying, we'll give you the sideline. You're left-footed, we'll give you the right sideline. We dare you to go that way. And they're basically blocking off every other path. So basically he's trying to maneuver around, doesn't find anything, and then just has to pass it back. So they're putting two guys on that side to basically block him from going either straight or to the left and just leaving the right open. And as a left footer, predominantly left footer, it's hard for him to dribble right. And I do agree with Mike. I wish we could move Lee Kang-in more centrally, but the problem is, who do we have at right wing? We don't really have a natural right winger. Whether that's another left-footed inverter type or just straight down the right side. I mean, Hwang In-chan doesn't work on the right side. We know that. We've seen it plenty of times. That's not going to work. There's a guy that I thought we were going to call up, especially with the injuries, that I think could have played that side with, everyone's ooh and on if Yang Min-young could have possibly got picked up, which he didn't, which is strange because he's still in Korea. It's not like he's over in Europe, and it seemed like more of a distance issue. So they picked domestic players. And who's hotter than him right now. So it was kind of weird not to see him play, but I think that's the issue right now is that even if you move Lee Kang into the middle, I mean, Lee Jae-sung is probably even worse on the right. So, I think defensively also Lee Jae-sung helps Hwang In-bum a lot, especially when Hwang In-bum moves up a little bit to play more offensively. So he's kind of like that jack of all trades type of player, almost like the type of player that Lee Kang-in is for PSG, where he's just kind of plugged in there and saying, kind of just fit in, do stuff. Do your thing, move off the ball, crash the box. Early in the first half, I think we were kind of misusing Lee Jae-sung a little bit and like throwing him on long passes. He's not really a burner, so that wasn't going to work. So I think he's just better when you don't set up anything for him, and he just kind of decides to, oh, this is my time to crash the box. He's really good at that. His timing and positioning as far as where to be and when to be there is probably the best on the national team. Now, does he leave a lot to be desired technically? That's yes. I mean, his passing, he's not much of a shooter. Dribbling wise, he can be his first touch can be a little iffy. But he kind of reminds me of I don't want to say Park Ji-sung, but kind of a similar type of he doesn't need the ball to succeed and play well. I think that's when he plays his best, is when he's really not in the picture and then he just comes out of nowhere. Oh shoot, there's Lee Ji-sung for a diving header. Oh, there's Lee Ji-sung coming out, getting a rebounded ball and crossing it back in the box. Like those are his best plays. And while he is limited technically, I feel like every team needs one of those type of like blue guys who does the dirty work. And I mean, he does that better than anybody else.
Yeah, ironically, I think that Lee Jae-sung is the one player in this team that should not have a defined role. Like, he's not the most creative player, and he's not the best technically in any one thing, which doesn't make it useless, but it just makes it a necessity for him to not be penciled in as an 8 or a 10 or even as a right winger, I totally agree, man. He just pops out of nowhere. He's one of those guys that likes to just jump on loose balls. I think that's when he's best. He's not very good with the ball at his feet. I think he does make a lot of good plays in link up. He has those he makes what I like to call those quiet plays, those high football IQ moments. But again, my question with EJ Hung is that he's very useful, but as we move closer to 2026, I remember Mike was talking about this in the Twitter spaces after the game. There's just an embarrassment of riches in attack on this team, and I do wonder if we have too many riches and too many young guys coming up to the point where maybe Lee Jae-sung's spot as a bona fide starter should not be guaranteed. Doesn't mean we drop him, doesn't mean we don't play him, but maybe there should be some games where we experiment with the formation that doesn't include Lee Jae-sung in the starting lineup. But again, I think Paul made up a great point about Korea having a lack of right wingers. It seems like all of our attacking players like playing as inverted right footers on the left side. I think that's kind of a bit of the Sonny effect, maybe. Yeah, that right wing spot, I think that's part of the reason why Hong Myung-bo and Jurgen Klinsmann were playing Lee Kang-in on the right side, is just because they didn't trust any of these younger cats to play on that right side and be good enough. But yeah, going back to Lee Kang-in, I think his time on the right wing worked for a bit during Klinsmann's first few games, just because, let's be honest, opposing teams around the world didn't know how good this kid was. The hype wasn't there. And then we saw what he did against Peru, El Salvador in those first few matches. We didn't win, but he was basically exposing those defenders from Central and South America. And then he moves to PSG, plays well, and then obviously now teams know who he is and they're keying in on him. So I really do think it is time to move him into the middle. But then again, where does Lee Jae-sung go, and then who plays on the right side? It's a lot of puzzles that don't fit in certain spots that Hong Myung-bo has to figure out, and I'm not sure he's created enough to do that. And to be fair to him, not a lot of managers are. I wouldn't be either. It's a very tough situation to be in. I guess to wrap up on the Lee Kang-in thing, would you guys be disappointed if in the first game of the 2026 World Cup you saw Lee Kang-in at right wing? Do you think then we have a serious problem?
I don't think it's a problem.
No, I would not be disappointed about that at all. No, I'd be okay with that. I was just thinking about this. I think that he could work on the right side, especially when Sun comes back from injury. Just imagine, let's say Sun and Bae are rotating centrally to the left, right? And then you have him off your right. I honestly think in this international break, Bae Jun-ho might have become an undroppable guy right now. He's too on form. He's showing that he has a lot of what this national team really needs. He was a problem for the Iraqi defense all first half. They did not know what to do with him. They were scared of him. And he was either popping up in the right place to get into the box, or he was executing his passes into the box in a manner where Lee Myung-jae or Lee Jae-sung were getting on the end of that ball and trying to start creating something. He was just too good. So I think he's the guy that's ending up, in effect, kind of pushing Lee Jae-sung out of the starting lineup. I think that, if we realize, hey, at this point in our personnel, we don't really have another good right winger other than Lee Kang-in at a starting level, right? You could say that someone like Jung Sang-bin or Ji-sung or Yang Min-hyuk could be off the bench guy on the right wing, but are they starting level? Maybe not yet, right? So if you want to keep that right wing to Lee Kang-in, I'm fine with it, because I think that you can put enough players on the other sides to kind of outweigh the drawbacks of putting Lee Kang-in on the right. I think that I would be okay with it. PJ, would you be okay with it though?
I think that's what's going to happen, to be honest with you, just because of the lack of a prospect to play the right side, like you said, at a starting level. I think these two games, Lee Kang-in got to feel what it's like to be Son maybe a little bit. I know we're talking about the Batman and Robin role, and he got to step in and be Batman, and maybe he's not ready for that yet. He doesn't have to take that on at PSG at all. Obviously, he kind of hides in the back, when they have so many offensive players that other teams have to deal with. So I think that was why we didn't see the Lee Kang-in that we're used to. I don't think he's used to seeing 2 to 3 defenders on him, every second. I think this did help our team, even if he didn't look great. I think Jun-ho was, probably on the rewarding end of that for, he was in a lot of one-on-one situations with a lot of space on the left-hand side, to be able to kind of get these Iraqi defenders on their back heels a little bit and be able to kind of expose them. Anytime you saw Lee Kang-in touch the ball on the right side, it's like he's trapped immediately. And there's really, I'm like, even when I'm watching him, I'm like, I don't know where he's gonna go. Like, you expect some magic to happen, but I'm like, there's physically nowhere for him to go. So unless he can just take it down the right hand side with some speed, which we know that's not in his game, I think that's what we saw. But in the end, I think it did benefit our team. So we can't really complain because the results were there. But as you stated, I think once Son Heung-min comes back and once we have more proven players, that we can kind of balance that defense a little bit as far as the opposition, where it can't just be, just filled in on one side like it was in the last 2 games. I think that will free up Lee Kang-in a little bit to do his thing, because right now with the way and even I think opposing managers have both said it. Both Jordan manager and Iraqi manager said that their plan was basically, we're shutting down Lee Kang-in's side. We're not letting him do anything. Whether someone else beats us, so be it. We're just not letting him beat us. So I think that's a new type of pressure that he's just gonna have to deal with. Again, he hasn't dealt with that since like the Mallorca days, I guess. But that's a bit of a different story, since that's club level football. But it'll be interesting. But I think he will be our right winger for the World Cup. And as long as we have some balance on the left hand side, where defense have to pay attention, and with the upcoming players like you said, like Pejino, and then obviously Sonny coming back from injury and stuff like that, I think then teams won't be able to do that so comfortably. So that's how I see it, Albert. I think he will be on the right way.
And then let's move to the striker position, I guess. It hasn't really been nailed down. I think Cho Gyu-sung has fallen off a cliff. I think he's still hurt, hasn't shown up in the Danish league in a long time. Gentlemen, if I'm wrong, right now it looks like Oh Se-hoon and Oh Hyung-gyu. I don't think Chu Min-gyu is going to be on the 2026 roster. Some people were saying maybe the Oh Hyung-gyu hype train is a little too much. But I mean, Oh Se-hoon was okay today, but I don't know if it was Paul that mentioned it, but it was a tap in. I think it was actually Chang who said his 2-year-old could have scored that. Fair play, he finished it, but
It
going
also got
forward,
deflected, by the way, going in. Just
yeah,
FYI.
it did. It did. Thank you. Going forward, guys, obviously Hong knows more than us, but for me, it's open season on that striker position. You score, you play. You don't, you sit on the bench.
I think that's what you want. Like, you want to be picking the strikers that are scoring in their league. I would hope that Myung-bo is willing to send 3 strikers to the World Cup, especially since 26-man rosters is now a thing. He should want to devote at least 3 spots to that. So for me, like, I'd still want to see Cho Gyu-sung come back to form and have some sort of different option. I mean, they're all different kinds of players. I think that Cho Gyu-sung and Oh Se-hoon seem somewhat similar, and they try to do similar things. So they might be like 2 guys that are pretty similar. Oh Hyun-gyu is totally different to them. He's a real fox in the box. He's way faster than them. He's a lot better with the ball at his feet. So I think we all hope that Oh Hyun-gyu is the guy that's in form by the time next month comes around. By the time 2026 comes around and is starting for us, because I think his ceiling is the highest in terms of like what he can offer. I think he could be a guy that can dribble by people. I think he's a guy that can, release the right passes, and he's the one that has the best shooting boots. Oh Se-hoon and Jo Kyu-sung still seem kind of like guys that are best with headers. And that's not the only way that you score goals. But the other thing that I did want to say before we kind of move on is that even if our 2 opponents this window close down our right side, I would like to mention that both of our first goals in those matches did come down the right side from Soyoung-woo, because Lee Kang-in had vacated all of that space coming towards the middle, and then there was space in behind, right? So even if you do key in on Lee Kang-in and try to deny him the right-hand side, you still have to realize you might not have paid attention to Soyoung-woo, and he might have found enough space for himself. So it's not as if their game plans totally worked, or no goals would have come down that side, but two did, and two very crucial ones did. So I still think like the offense is kind of evolving in a good way. So yeah, it was a very good window offensively. I think we opened up a lot of new tactical avenues to attack. So that was good.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to chime in on that, I think Oh Hyung-gyu does have kind of the upper hand. I think his overall game probably is a little bit better than Oh Sehun's. Oh Sehun's has obviously some advantages aerially, as far as like bodying people and stuff like that. He's a little bit better there. But everywhere else, I feel like Oh Hyung-gyu is stronger. Whether that's like you said, being a fox in the box, or just being at the right place at the right time, or making good runs. We have a lot of guys who can thread through balls to the final third, and I think he's probably better fit for that than Oh Sehun or Cho Gyu-sung, to be honest with you. He's not as clumsy with his feet, and as far as the way he moves, he's way more agile. He just seems more dangerous to be honest with you. It just even if he's not touching the ball, just his movement alone and how aggressive and direct he is, I think puts a lot of pressure on the defense, and that probably even opens up things for the cutback and people behind him. So um, it's good having different profiles too, I believe. But Mike, as you mentioned, I think Cho Gyu-sung and Oh Se-won do have some similarities in their games, as far as whether it's their physical build or how they play. So it'll be interesting to see who kind of gets the upper hand between those two. But I think Oh Young is kind of on a on an island by himself right now as far as how he plays. So he has an advantage there, I think. So when we need to play his play style, I think he'll be the guy. I think there's no question about that. Right now, he has all the momentum, scoring 2 goals in 2 games, getting in form at Genk now. So we'll see how it goes. I think moving on from Celtic was probably the best thing he did, because he was he was gone for a second there. I mean, just like the rest of the guys on the Celtic, I mean, we weren't seeing them at all. So I think he made a really good career choice there to start to get some minutes, get his level up a little bit, and now he's at a good spot, I think.
I think the next window is going to be in November, if I'm not mistaken. Honestly, the opponents, not too worried. Kuwait and Palestine. The rest of the group at this point, qualification should be a wrap, barring anything catastrophic. Which means that, for 2025, you really got to start preparing if we want to win a knockout game in the World Cup, friendlies against high quality opponents. But maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but I just don't see it in the KFA to properly schedule opponents, because most of them won't want to fly to Korea unless it's the off season. So it means you're going to have to go to Europe, or you're going to have to go to North America, or you're going to have to fly to South America, and the KFA just does not want to lose money on these friendly matches. And we talked about it in the group chat. I think that if we want to win a round of 16 match and go to the quarterfinals, which is what my expectations are, or at least my hope is for 2026, you have to play the likes of teams like Croatia, a USA. They don't have to be a France, a Portugal, a Germany, but they have to be on a level a little higher than us, so we can prepare for when times get tough in those tournaments when you need to suffer. And looking at the fixture list for the rest of the year and the qualifiers, I don't see many tests. And more importantly, also, I need to see Myung-bo tested against better teams. I believe that even if Jurgen Klinsmann was the manager, probably still would have done somewhat well in these matches just because of the quality of our team.
One thing I do want to push back. I'm not so sure we would have won these games with Jurgen Klinsmann as our manager. I'm just gonna say it.
Maybe that was too hyperbolic. I think we could have won with like an interim. We could have won with Kim Do-hoon. How's that? Yeah.
That's certainly possible. Jurgen Klinsmann had us looking like shells of ourselves. Like, he made every single player on that roster play as bad as they could possibly play. So that's just one thing. But yes, so this round of qualifying is going to wrap up next June. So we've got games 5 and 6 in November. We've got games 5 and 6 in November, games 7 and 8 in March, and then games 9 and 10 in June. So by then we should have been qualified for the World Cup, right? But what that means is that there's actually no summer window until like 2026, like preparation time for the World Cup, before we're actually like playing friendlies, right? So the first time that we're going to be theoretically playing friendlies would be the fall of 2025, which would be, prime KFA wants to make its money and bring someone over. But yeah, like if we're talking about a team that the KFA has played before, yeah, they should schedule a friendly with the U.S. men's national team. They really should, and they should be willing and able and ready to travel to the U.S. to do it. You got to get on the ground and know what it feels like to play in the U.S. in some of these big stadiums and on these types of pitches out there. So I could see them doing like a fall window where maybe they ask Japan to come too, and the first game of the friendly series is like U.S. plays Korea, and then Japan plays Mexico, and then we play Mexico and Japan plays the U.S. Something like that. That could be a little partnership that happens, and then maybe like another window in the fall of next year, they go to Europe and play some of those big teams. They really should. If they're really trying to prepare for this World Cup seriously, maybe do one window in the US, one window in Europe, and then save the last window of the year for Korea and just invite whoever you want. But if they're just being like, yeah, all fall 2025, you're all coming to Korea and playing us, no, that's not going to work, because we're going to get like, not great African teams, not great South American teams, and probably like lower end European teams to do that.
I think we're all in the same boat here. I think, leading up to the World Cup, I'd rather see us lose to really good teams than beat bad teams. So, I mean, that really doesn't prove anything for us. I think you learn way more from your losses than you do from your wins. There's so much that you get away with in your wins that probably gets overlooked. And then when you lose, everything is magnified and looking, is taking a look under the microscope, and everyone can see what the issues are by losses. I think they're masked by wins. So I'd rather, like you said, see us play some powerhouses here, take some L's along the way. That's fine. That. It doesn't matter. It's 0-0 once the World Cup starts. None of those games matter. It's just, what have you learned from those games? What have we evolved from those games? Have we done anything to better ourselves from those games? And as long as we do that, I think that's the biggest W. Not beating, like you said, like a Peru or something like that at home and saying, oh, we did great. Oh, we beat a South American team. Look at us. That's history shows that. I mean, leading up to the 2002 World Cup, we played France, we played England, all these teams. Even though we took some L's along the way, it prepared us, man, and we need that. And I think, the World Cup being in the U.S., playing in the U.S. is definitely a thing. We definitely should do that, whether it's in New York or L.A. Pick a big city, make your money, everyone's happy.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be tracking all the updates as we lead up to the 2026 World Cup. It's going to be a great time, guys. But until then, we hope that the KFA does schedule proper matches for this team, because it really is important to get matches against quality opponents like Japan. Part of their meteoric rise has been the fact that they're not afraid to play teams like Germany, like these European teams that they schedule friendlies with, and they win them because they're just able. You don't get better by playing someone worse than you, right? Like Paul said, you got to lose a few games and have learned these lessons to improve, and we hope it'll happen. We'll see. There's also one more thing I do want to talk about before we end today. Next week, on the 22nd of October, I believe Myung-bo, the chairman of the KFA, will be heading back to the National Assembly for another hearing/audit. The excellent Korean football reporter who we work with, Steve Han, has basically said that this hearing is actually more important than the previous one that we talked about. This is one where actually maybe some consequences could arise out of that. For me, I have very low expectations because I think Myung-bo is pretty untouchable at this point. But as we wrap up, guys, just what do you think of this upcoming hearing? What do you expect? Just your thoughts on that.
I remember initially when all this started, I was really excited, maybe because I was just naive and didn't know enough about what could possibly happen. But like, you get all this information, they say all the right things, you think something's going to happen, and then they're like, oh, sorry, we can't do anything though. It's like this big tease saying like, oh, he's made all these mistakes, he's done all these wrong things, but you know what? Sorry, we can't do anything. So it just seems like that's what's going to happen again. So I don't want to put any expectation into it. I'm just more confused by this man's pride. Like at what point do you not look yourself in the mirror and say, nobody likes me? Why am I doing this? But he's just like with a smile and a grin, just like, yeah, this is what I do, man. And you're just like, that's the part I don't get. Like he's like that, just out of it. as far as like whether it's his awareness or he doesn't care. I don't know what it is. But man, if I was doing a job and no one liked me, I mean, I would not continue to do that job. But this man is sick in the head or something, and he just wants to piss people off. I don't know what it is, but he's just gonna keep going at it. And I wish, based off of how this all started, that there were consequences. But seeing that as there hasn't been any, and they've just basically said they can't do anything, I don't expect anything this time either.
I was just thinking about this, PJ. You know who Chung Mung-kyu reminds me of is the villain like CEO from what's that drama that was like really popular during the pandemic?
I mean,
The one about like the restaurant.
Itaewon Class?
Yeah, he reminds me of the villain CEO from Itaewon Class.
Okay.
Because that guy did not care about shit. That guy was like, you may hate me, but I'll do whatever the hell I want to you. That's kind of like what Chung Won-gyu is like kind of reminding me of now. I don't think this guy cares like whether we like him or not. He just wants his money, and he wants his power. He wants his title as president. That's really important to him. It's a pride thing. I'm with you, PJ. I don't have any expectations of this parliamentary hearing. Like these lawmakers can try to rip this guy. They can hurl whatever insults they want at him. I don't know if it really matters unless like there's some real criminal stuff going down at the KFA that they've found out about. Like if we're talking like money laundering at the KFA or something like that, maybe, but I mean that would have come out by now, right? Like we would know about that by now. So it just feels like it's another show where these politicians can like kind of win some more votes from people where they're like, oh, these politicians really do roast the head of the KFA. I like that. I'm going to vote for them again at the next election. But I don't think it's going to matter that much. But we do have to one thing say. The head of the Korean Olympic Committee keeps saying that he will somehow do something to block Chung Mung-gyu's nomination for a next presidential term. He keeps saying he can do something about that. And I just wonder how true that is. Like, I'd love it to be true. Because like, why would he keep saying it if it wasn't true? But we'll see.
From what Steve has said, I think that the head of the Olympic Committee can technically take steps to remove Chung Mung-gyu, but that would result in an automatic ban from FIFA for the Korean national teams because there's a clause about government interference. Now, from what Steve has said, there's another man called Kim Hyung-chul who runs a different committee in the government. He is the one who can give permission to Chung Mung-gyu to run for a fourth term because usually you're term limited when it comes to being the head of one of these associations in Korea. From what Steve has said, Kim has been wined and dined a lot by Chung, been invited to his resort multiple times. They seem to have a good personal relationship. I'm not going to get too deep into conspiracy stuff, but I mean, in the world of business and with people that powerful, there's always a personal spin, I feel like. That's where I think the decision has to be made. But again, like you guys said, you guys summed it up perfectly. It just seems like the lawmakers, too, their hearts aren't even in the right place. They're just doing it to win votes or to get publicity. And I think the fact that the lawmakers also called in Jesse Lingard to testify on the state of the pitches in the K-League, it's like, you couldn't have gotten like an expert to do that? I mean, we know why you called Jesse, right? You wanted the attention. So again, I don't want to go too far on this, but I think this kind of shows the state of Korean society and media politics in general. And I don't think I would have said this years ago, but it seems like it's affecting even Korean football, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, and I mean, just to update, Jesse Lingard said he wasn't coming. He's like, I'm not interested in this. Like, thanks for the invite, but nah, I'm not coming. Like, you don't need to send me to the National Assembly for this. Like, I'm not interested. Thanks, but no thanks. So he's not going. But it was a publicity stunt. They tried it. It didn't work out for them. And we'll see what they have. The only thing that I can say, this is a conspiracy theory, but like, what if a lot of money's been changing hands between Chung Mung-gyu and that guy that runs that integrity commission or whatever other committee, right? What if like a lot of dirty money's been exchanging hands? And that's like the lawmakers like big like expo there where they're like, oh yeah, we found out all about the money that you've been giving him and it's all kinds of illegal. That's the only thing I can see. But other than that, like really, he's probably going to stay as president. He's just going to get humiliated one more time, and I think he's fine with that. He's cool with that.
Fingers crossed, gentlemen, but I'm still a believer in Justice may be late, but it always arrives, and hopefully it arrives for Mr. Chung. In the meantime, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for our channel. Follow us on Twitter. Link the fellas' personals also in the description. In the meantime, stay safe and healthy. We'll see you in the next video.
You
Peace
guys.
out.